Okay, guys, welcome back. We're going to go ahead and get right into section 8.2, which is continuing the inverse trig functions. And what I want to do is I want to look at, just jumping right into it, and looking at the sine of tangent inverse of a half. Okay, now what we're going to do here with this inverse, the sine of the inverse tangent of a half, is we are going to come up with a triangle and eventually figure out from that triangle what sine is. Okay, so essentially we're going to find sine of theta. Okay, so theta equals what is inside here. So theta is going to be equal to tangent inverse of a half. Okay, so if tangent inverse is a half, then tangent theta is a half. Okay, because what we do is we take this, we multiply it by tangent, and we take this and multiply it by tangent. The inverse tangent and the tangent cancel here, leaving us with tangent of theta. That equals a half. Okay, now since tangent equals a half, we know that our slope is going to be positive because the tangent is, if we have x, y, our tangent is the y over x, and so this is going to be positive, and so we know that this is either going to be in quadrant 1 or quadrant 3, because if we do this, the slope there, that's positive, or if we do the slope here, that's also positive. This slope is negative, this slope is positive. Okay, so we know we're going to be in either quadrant 1 or quadrant 3. If our slope is negative, we're going to be in quadrant 2 or quadrant 4. Now, to determine whether in quadrant 1 or quadrant 3, we need to look see what we're finding. We're finding sine. Okay, so if we take a look, tangent is greater than 0. So if tangent is greater than 0, then we're looking at quadrant 1. Okay. So we're in quadrant 1. Since tan is a half, let me erase this. Since tangent is a half and we're in quadrant 1, tangent equals a half. So it's y over x, so our coordinate is going to be x, which is 2, and 1, which is y. So our point that we're going to be drawing our triangle from is 2, 1, okay, which is right here. So here's our triangle we're dealing with. So this is 2, 1, which means this length is 2, this length is 1. Now what we need to do is we want to find sine, okay? So what we do is sine is, well, what we do is we figure out sine, and sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Well, we know what the opposite is. Opposite is 1. So it's going to be 1 over our hypotenuse. And to find our hypotenuse, we just use a squared, which is 1 squared, plus b squared, which is 2 squared, equals our hypotenuse, which equals c squared, which is our hypotenuse squared. 1 squared is 1, plus 4 equals h squared. So 5 equals h squared. Take the square root. So our hypotenuse is 5. So our triangle ends up being, here's our point, Here's our point. 2, 1. Our hypotenuse, the length is the square root of 5. This is 1, this is 2. So sine is our opposite of this angle, which is 1 over hypotenuse, which is the square root of 5. Now, can we have a square root of 5 inside or underneath in the denominator? No, so we multiply by square root of 5 on the bottom and the top. Okay, and so then this ends up being square root of 5 over 5, and that is our sine answer. Okay, same thing works for cosine, tangent. When we work through some of these problems, there's a couple different things that I'm gonna show you as we get to them. But this is pretty much the bulk of how it's worked. Okay, now if we are dealing with a calculator, I don't have a calculator in front of me, but if let's say we wanted to use the inverse secant of 3 and we wanted to evaluate this in our calculator. Well, to do this, let's let theta equal this secant inverse of 3. Now, what we want to do is secant, these secants cancel out, leaving us with secant theta equaling 3. Now, secant is the same as 1 over cosine. So 1 over cosine theta equals 3, okay, which is the same as 3 over 1. If we cross multiply, boom, bam, so cosine theta times 3 equals 1, and so we need to get cosine by itself, so we divide by 3, so cosine theta is a third. Okay, so then we end up with, since cosine theta is 1/3, okay, if we do cosine -1, cosine -1, those cancel, leaving us with theta equaling cosine inverse of 1/3. Punch that into your calculator, and that approximately equals 1.23. Okay, so this is kind of how we get it manipulated so we can do this in a calculator. That concludes our video for this evening. Short, sweet, to the point. And I will see you all tomorrow.